Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we already started this debate, so I don't need to go through it too much again, but once again, just to briefly go over what I had reiterated yesterday. Idaho is very mineral rich. We do not want foreign government-controlled companies or entities coming in and having possession of these elements, nor our own food production capabilities to protect ourselves. This is not only a national security measure, but also an Idaho security measure. And we have fixed the situation that the good senator brought up. And if you look now, you will see that there's any controlling interest in ag land or anything of that sort. So with that, debate is open.
Is there further debate? Hearing none.
Mr. President.
Senator Burton-Shaw.
So, good senators, I think the intentions of this bill were good, but I think it has some issues that we need to look at. And as we talk about agriculture, that's something I know about. I have ag property and ranch property. And what this bill is doing is inserting somebody between me and a willing buyer. So it says any foreign government or foreign state-controlled enterprise shall not purchase, acquire, or hold any controlling interest in agricultural land, water rights, mining claims, or mineral rights in the state of Idaho. That covers it all. So if I have a friend that comes down from Canada and wants to buy my farm, I can't sell it to him. The state of Idaho has just made it illegal for him to buy my property. Now, I get that we're concerned about China, and I get that we're concerned about Russia and other interests, but the way I read that, that's the way it reads. And then you go down a little ways and it says controlling interest, possession of 51% or more than 50%. Let's talk about that. Who's the largest agricultural-based company in Idaho? It's probably Simplot. They're huge. Now you're saying that nobody can come in and buy part of that company, or they have to buy 50% or less of that company in order to purchase it. So we've just placed the state of Idaho between the willing seller and the willing buyer. And that's a concern, and that's dangerous to me. We go down a little farther and we say that when we talk about mining claims, it says it means a portion of land containing minerals that a miner has a right to occupy and possess for the possession of extracting minerals. Now, as many of you may know, we had Jervois Mining Company come into the state of Idaho, and they took over the cobalt claim in Salmon, Idaho. And Jervois is a pretty big company. They have offices in Finland, Brazil, Australia, of course, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And now they have a claim in Salmon, Idaho. That's a foreign country that we're talking about, Australia. Nobody in the state of Idaho or in the United States seem to want to be a part of that claim. But what we are doing is limiting the ability for someone to come in and do it. Jervois has invested $130 million in that project, employed 300 people. I just got a call from the manager of that mining operation up there yesterday when I was on the floor. I saw his telephone number come across. I stepped outside and he says, Vanna, I just wanted you to know that we're going to have to shut down operations. I says, what do you mean? He said, well, cobalt went from $40 a pound down to 15.5%, or $15.50 a pound. When they extract that mineral out of the mountain, it has to be worked up, separated, and then put into those 1-ton bags, loaded in vans, and then hauled out of the mountain, and it goes clear to the coast and is loaded on a ship, and then is taken clear to Brazil to be processed. It's a big deal, and it's a huge investment that they've made. Monsanto didn't come in, Simplot didn't come in and try to buy that mine, but Jervoy did. That's a foreign country, Australia. For me, it's concerning that we as a state would allow my title to my property to have an addendum to it, that a man from Canada wouldn't be able to come down and buy that property. I think this is a scary track we're on. I don't think it's thought out well enough. I think it's something that we should be concerned about. And with that, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Taves.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow senators. I think there might be a little bit of confusion, and so I just wanted to do some clarifying. I believe that we're conflating a foreign company or a foreign person with the actual text in this bill, which says a foreign government or a foreign state-controlled enterprise. So we're not talking about a friend from Canada. We're not talking about a company that is formed in a different country. We're talking about a company that would be owned by a government or a foreign government itself. So I think that limits the concern of this bill getting between me and a potential buyer, and I would support this bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Guthrie.
just to concur with the senator from 4, I don't think this has anything to do with private treaty. This is specific to government owned, so I'm going to be supporting the bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Nichols.
thank you to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I think this is a great bill. I think this is a timely bill with what's transpiring around the world and in our country. There is huge concern about foreign governments coming in and purchasing lands and taking over our agriculture, our agricultural lands, our water, minerals, and so on. So I believe that this is a timely bill. You know, in many other countries, and I've had the privilege of living in another country before, you can't just go in and buy land. There are a lot of restrictions in order to be able to do that. This does not negate individuals being able to come in and purchase land. What this does is to make sure that governments are not coming in and buying up our lands and our resources and our water. So with the current global circumstances that we're in, this is becoming more and more critical for Idaho to be able to protect the land, the resources, and the water that we have here. So I'll be supporting this bill.
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Herndon, you have the floor.
And I just want to add to what some of the other senators have said, that let's take Canada, a friendly foreign government. If they have an entity that they have an interest in that decides to acquire some of this agricultural land, they would partner with the U.S. interest, a U.S.-controlled, U.S.-based interest, and they don't have to give up their ownership, but they just can't have a controlling interest. And so we're not even excluding a company that maybe has another foreign government that has some interest in it, but it just can't be a controlling interest. So I think this is a narrow sliver, and what we're saying about this land is we don't want foreign governments having a controlling interest over this land.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, debate the bill.
Lakey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I kind of struggled with this. I really appreciate the purpose, the effort to try to make sure that we are secure. I certainly have concerns with China and Russia. But I think my comments line up with some previous comments that the senator from 6 made before. We really are not talking about just the buyer, we're talking about the seller. And we are stepping on the property rights of the seller. If Australia wants to come in and buy my 20 acres of farm ground, or Ireland, or Great Britain, I don't have a problem with that. I practice land use law, and I always struggle a little bit when people come to a land use hearing and protest some property owner's application to do something with their property, particularly in regards to agricultural ground. One of the favorite things they like to say is, we need to preserve our farm ground. And frankly, there's no such thing as our ground, our farm ground. It's not a collective we that owns this property. Unless you live in a socialist or a communist country, then it belongs to everybody. But we're not talking about our anything. We're talking about property that belongs to an individual. So with that, I will be voting against the bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good senators. Again, I guess this has to be reiterated again. This is not saying that an Irishman can't buy your land. It's saying that the country of Ireland can't buy your land. And as far as private property rights go, I think it's kind of funny. Eminent domain exists, right? So I can own my property, and next month, the government can decide a highway needs to go through my backyard and buy me out. And yes, there are steps to go through that, but clearly, we all have some vested interest in the resources of the country that we belong to. I think about the continent of Africa and how almost every country on that continent, their resources have been bought up by foreign governments. And we are one of those foreign governments. Go to any continent. I think this is a great bill. I think we have an issue right now at the federal level, a lot of vulnerability on the international stage. And for the state of Idaho, we should be protecting the resources that we have here, our ability to feed ourselves. All those things. This is, again, not against buyers that are from other countries. It's foreign governments. We're going to sell North Idaho to Canada? What would Canada do if the United States government decided to buy up all the private property in Alberta and then declare it theirs because they have all the property or they have all the mineral rights? How would Canada respond to that? We do have a responsibility to step up in this space. Again, I've heard a lot about property rights. This is a state issue, not an individual buyer and seller issue. So I'll be voting yes. I encourage you to do the same. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Senator Lenny,
debate the bill.
you have the floor.
Echoing what many of my colleagues have already said, I think it's a very good bill, a very timely bill. For me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism instead of giving away our country one piece at a time, one farmland at a time, 1 acre at a time. And again, I feel like we're kicking a dead horse, but I'll kick it one more time. This is about foreign governments buying pieces of Idaho. Could you imagine if someone somewhere like North Korea decided to buy up all of Sandpoint, or we could do those. What if so and so bought this piece of land? It's just a common sense security bill to me, and I am in strong support of it, and I commend the sponsor for bringing it forward.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, to debate the bill.
Senator Foreman, you have the floor to debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand the security concerns, but if you put yourself in the shoes of foreign nationals people from the UK, France, Canada, Mexico, wherever. Granted, they are not governments in and of themselves, but they have governments. And I think for a country like the United States to try to do this could be misinterpreted. Now, we have a security interest, and that's what's driving this legislation, but put yourselves in the shoes of the communist government in China or Russia or Cuba. This could be misinterpreted as a sign of fear and weakness on the part of Idaho and, by extension, the United States. The United States has always been an open country. We have immigration laws, but we're a welcoming country. To send a signal that if you're a foreign government, particularly a friendly foreign government, you can't come here and buy property if you have a controlling interest. That's really sending a mixed signal. Currently, the United States of America has over 700 military installations on foreign soil. We have a naval base on the island of Cuba. And we're going to tell those governments they can't come here and buy a chunk of Idaho? What kind of a mixed message is that sending? Now, granted, I understand the security concerns we have, but we have tremendous capabilities to guard against any force, any entity from any government that wants to come here and do us harm. I'm pretty well schooled in some of it. My knowledge might be a little bit dated, but I can assure you there's no foreign government that's going to come in and take over Idaho or any part of this country. It's not going to happen. I think this bill flies in the face of the free and open alienation of property. The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole. They don't look favorably on gross restrictions on the alienation of title. And I think this legislation is a gross restriction on a citizen's right to convey title to his or her lawfully owned property. Again, I understand the intent, but I can't support this fatally flawed bill, even though it is well intended.
Mr. President,
Senator Schroeder.
debate the bill. So along the line with the senator from 6, and senator from 23, we don't know the nature for which a foreign-controlled or foreign corporation, so it could be a foreign government, but a foreign state partnership. So many governments have these quasi-governmental entities. They're partly government and partly private. And the purposes for which they want to obtain property, it could include something like a mine, or it could be an embassy, or a place to land airplanes and conduct trade. But in any event, as the senator from 6 indicated and what the senator from 23 started to allude to, all these pieces of property in the state of Idaho are subject to Idaho law. They're well within Idaho's borders. They're very secure. They have to comply. Everything that is done on this land must comply with Idaho law. Idaho's zoning law, or the local land use planning act, so they can't put it to some nefarious purpose. We control all of the land around it, and the United States government controls what is done with the land ultimately, and for that reason, I won't be supporting the bill. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Senator Zeiderfeld.
to debate the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm sitting here in my head, and you guys are going to laugh because I keep on saying we should have a musical. And I'm thinking of This Land Is Our Land. Song is going through my head as we're debating this. And can I share something from Forbes article on March 1st, 2023.
Having cited the source, Senator, you may read from that source.
Okay, these are countries who own the most acres of U.S. agricultural land. Canada comes in first at 12,845,000 acres. The Netherlands come in at 4,875,000 acres. Italy comes in 2,703,000 acres. United Kingdom comes in 2,538,000 acres. Germany, 2,669,000 acres. Portugal, 1,483,000. France, 1,316,000. Denmark, 856,000. Luxembourg, 802. And Ireland, 760. So we don't have just a problem with China. We have a lot of countries coming over here buying our land, and we need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first. We need to start encouraging people to maybe buy our own land and keep our own land. And I don't see anything wrong. Like they were saying, it's not really on the personal property. It's more of like the government is coming in, but just seeing this how many acres are owned by other countries, I think it's time that we start doing everything that we can to defend our lands, because this is our farmland. And so anyway, with that, I just wanted to share those numbers, and I'm going to vote in favor.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, debate a second time.
Does anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? Senator Herndon is recognized to debate the bill for a second time.
I just want to refocus part of the debate and say, first of all, that we wouldn't be the first state that's doing this. So Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, and Wisconsin have done the same thing. Because we're not talking about land that's industrial. We're not talking about residential lots. We're talking about very specific land, and that's agricultural production. And we're talking about mining claims or mineral rights and water rights. That's all we're talking about. These are strategic interests. The state of Idaho, as far as all the land that's available, is already controlled by the federal government to the tune of 63% of it. So we're only talking about the remaining land available, and of that, a certain portion is agricultural land, and that's what we're talking about. And so I think that Idaho would not be the first here. These are strategic interests, and I do encourage support of the bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Guthrie, for the second time.
for the first time I've ever asked for the second time in my history up here. Yes.
I trust you. Go ahead and go ahead and debate.
Just briefly, Senators, I don't know the quote exactly, but I think it was Will Rogers. It said something to the effect that they're not making any more land and trying to indicate how incredibly precious it is. And I agree with that. You know, down in Arizona, part of what's driving the interest in this is they bought up tens of thousands of acres, the water rights that go with it. They're shipping that agricultural product out of the country, and it's put pressure on the ag markets all over the West to try to supplement what it was taken away. And they do it with money beyond what is reasonable as far as the purchase of ag land, because they have a lot of money, they can pay way beyond market, and they can outprice anybody else on a willing buyer, willing seller type of deal. And it totally disrupts the economic balance. What is Idaho about? We're about ag and water and mining and timber, and that's what this is speaking to. This is a big deal, and I'd really like you to, some that are on the fence, to reconsider, because this is pretty narrowly crafted to try to protect the very things that Idaho takes great pride in and what makes Idaho the state that it is. And we're talking about foreign governments owning our resources and our land. And so I really encourage you to vote for this legislation.
Mr. President, to debate a second time.
Senator Adams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. All right, so here are just a couple of countries that ban foreigners in some way, shape, or form from owning property. Just a handful, in some way, where they have restrictions on property rights for foreigners. Not governments, just foreign people. Canada, Mexico, Hong Kong, Switzerland, Malaysia, Thailand, Australia, the Philippines, Singapore. That's just a couple. January of this year, Canada introduced a 2-year ban on foreigners from purchasing homes in their country. Most of these countries where they have a ban, they say you can own the house, but you can't own the land underneath it. And those are to just individuals. This bill has nothing to do with individuals. It has to do with foreign governments. I encourage your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President, everyone else is doing it.
Senator Lenny?
Second time. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to debate it for the first time? Senator Lenny, you're recognized to debate the bill for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. We put sanctions on countries all the time, specifically, in 2020 and other times, President Trump put sanctions on China, on Russia. This is something we've done for one reason, and it's to project strength. Our borders matter. When we're looking at Idaho, protecting what's ours matters, putting a stake. This bill, I think it puts a stake in the ground and says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours. The senator from 28 talked about when companies come here and do that, if we allow foreign companies to come here and just buy up our farmland, it's disrupting our economic balance. And he said it perfectly. This is about maintaining Idaho, keeping our economic balance. And I think this is one of those things that, I've said this before, this is something that I think is an Idaho solution for an Idaho problem. I forgot a couple days ago we voted on the Lava Ridge thing, and we kind of had the same arguments. We don't want companies given permission to run roughshod all over our ag and our farmlands. And that was about American companies. So now we're saying, I don't think we're saying this, but if we're against the Lava Ridge thing, and those are American companies doing it, I think this makes total sense. And again, just voicing my strong support for this bill.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
You couldn't resist.
I find myself in the unique position, like the senator from 28. I don't think I've ever debated twice in my 11 years here.
For what purpose does the senator rise?
To debate a second time. Thank you for making me admit it.
I want to get it on the record.
Yes.
Does anyone wish to debate it for the first time? Sarah Lakey, you recognize to debate the bill for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I'll be brief. The problem with this bill is it's not narrow. It's not targeted. If we have concerns about particular countries, that's different. But this is it's really broad. It could apply to the Australian Public Employee Retirement Fund that may again want to buy my 20 acres. Keep saying our property, our land. This is not our land. It belongs to an individual property owner. And if we have a policy about a particular country, then let's have a policy about a particular country, but not such a broad and unnarrow definition of any country across the globe cannot own property in Idaho as far as ag land or timber or those kind of things. So again, encourage your nay vote.
Mr. President,
Senator Anthem,
to debate the bill.
for the first time, you have the floor.
First time. Thank you, Mr. President. I've appreciated the debate, and as we often say, reasonable minds can disagree. And I respect very much all the debate I've heard today. I'm going to support the bill. And it's because I can imagine a scenario where a foreign government, I don't care which one it is, I don't care if it's one I like, I don't care if it's one I don't like, came into the Magic Valley and they bought all of the alfalfa production acreage so that they could produce that alfalfa and ship it back home. And if that happens, it would absolutely devastate the ag economy in my area. And for that reason and that analysis alone, I'll be supporting the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. President, to debate a second time.
Again, does anyone wish to debate it for the first time? I kind of do, but I can't, so.
Understandable.
Senator Nichols, you're recognized to debate the second time.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will be quick as well. I just wanted to say that, this issue has become a bipartisan issue, and I won't ask for the history of the bill to be read, but, this has been something that has had unanimous consent and in passage across the rotunda. It is a bipartisan issue. People are very concerned with what's transpiring in the United States with foreign governments coming in and purchasing property here. We do want to maintain and protect what we have and keep our state secure and be able to make sure that our resources, our water, our agriculture maintain intact. And so it is important, it's critical, I would say, that we support this legislation to preserve what we have in the state.
Is there further debate?
Mr. President,
Senator Van Orden.
to debate for the first time, please.
You are recognized to debate.
Thank you. I look at this and we talk about, the intention is great. And I've listened to the discussion that's went on, and I guess I would be more comfortable if we were talking about federal lands within our state borders, because the other lands are owned by individuals. And we talk about entities coming in and buying up. Well, they had to buy from somebody. And they're buying from individuals that have private property rights. That's their private property. And they're the ones that are selling it. If this was narrowed to talk about public lands, it might be a little bit different for me. And with that, I will be voting against the bill.
Is there further debate? The President will remind the body that as we can't talk about things that happen in committee, we also can't talk about the votes on the other side of the rotunda without asking for the secretary, who can read the history of the bill, and then that's where it becomes okay. Just another one of the rules you pay me to help enforce. Is there further debate? Hearing none. Who had that? Oh. Senator Trachel, you're recognized to stand and close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. To all the senators that get up and debated, I really appreciate the debate. Those that supported, I really appreciate the argument for, and even those that do not support, I appreciate the argument for. You bring about critical thinking and good ideas that we need to consider when doing this, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy being here with you. So to get onto the bill, what I would like to point out a few things. If I'm too loud, let me know. And to the senator of 31, I think I might have not explained it correctly when we had our sidebar earlier, so I apologize if I left any confusion, but I would like to point out that this does not deal with private companies. This does not affect a company that's even 49% owned by a foreign government. One example that was I'm going to mess up this name, the Jervoy mining company. Who owns this would not affect them. They're 49.6% general public owned. They're private company owned by 25.4%. They're institutions 16.2%, and individual insiders 8.9%. This wasn't affect them at all. There's no government entities in there. They're not controlled by the government of Australia. It would not affect them. And so businesses like that, not going to hurt. About people being able to sell to whoever they want to, I agree with that 100%. But there's also things that we limit people on based off of national security and state security. And there's some issues we need to look at. Now, How many foreign governments are actually coming in here to buy private property from people? Can't tell you. We don't track it. But it would be very serious if China, just like when they bought WH, the largest pork producer in the America, what if they came in and bought Simplot, and then something happens and everything Simplot produces goes to China? Would you still argue there? That's a very serious concern. We're talking about Idaho's sovereignty here over other countries. All land is subject to the law was mentioned, and I appreciate that, but I'd like to remind it's not illegal for a country to come in and buy the majority of our mining rights and start shipping them out of this country. It doesn't break the law. It doesn't break the law from the Saudi Arabia buying alfalfa fields here and shipping it all to Saudi Arabia. It's not against the law, but that would be detrimental to our ag community and our regular community here in Idaho. So one thing we need to consider too is how this looks to other countries. To me, I would disagree. I would say going on the defense does not show a weakness. It very much states where we are and what we're going to hold in our position. All in all, what it really comes down to is protecting Idahoans and this country from the possibility of mishap down the road. Just because somebody is our ally today does not make them our ally tomorrow. There's plenty of examples throughout history that have shown the swapping of sides of countries with us and then against us. These are things we need to be prepared for. And with that, Mr. President, I would like to ask the Secretary to read the results from across the rotunda. Is that allowed?
Mr. President, could we go to these to review the rule number?
Without objection, we'll go to these to get to the bottom of this parliamentary inquiry.
What rule? Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just... Oh, my mic's still on.
It's going to make a difference when you know how your House members vote.
During debate, no senator shall comment upon any action of the House of Representatives or member thereof in a manner which is when they refer to the procedure in the House, sufficient respect and action nor shall be mentioned the of the actions taken thereon any senator, except the secretary may be requested to represent. Are you in my office? Question mark.
While we're at ease, I'd like to take the moment and introduce some of my family members that are here. My son, David Winder, if you'd stand up so you can be recognized. Welcome, David. And the two fine-looking gentlemen next to him are my grandsons, and Trevor and Ryan. And if you guys would stand up. They're my mile markers of how long I've been in the Senate. They were born on March 18th, 14 years ago. They were preemies. They weighed just about 3 pounds. They were in the NICU for almost 2 months. And now you see them up there. They're 6 foot tall and big kids at age 14, and they've blessed us with their presence now for 14 years, and we appreciate you being here. It's fun to see you. It's been quite a few years since you've been here, so you've grown a little bit since then. So thanks for coming down here.
Years in this same legislature, permanent job since they repealed term limits.
And also, while we're at ease, I'm going to introduce someone who's been with me all week and is up in the gallery right now because she hasn't been here all week, and that's my wife, Arlene, up in the upper left. If you welcome her.
That's the vote counter there. He counts the votes on the computer. Wonder what they're doing. Counting the votes, twisting arms, making sure they get 18. This is a real estate deal. Lots of people in real estate like Winder, commercial real estate. Guthrie's bought a lot of land too in recent years. So he went from 80 acres to 1,000 acres.
The Senate will be in order. Prior to going to these, we're in the 12th order of business under a suspension calendar. Senator Treacle was closing debate on House Bill 173, and he placed a parliamentary inquiry, and we went at ease, and now here we are. Senator Treacle, you have the floor to finish your closing debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 24B, I would ask the Secretary to read the bill's history.
Secretary, and I'm assuming. All right. That's a great point. Now I'll remind the body that when when I said that this bill has a new name, it's 173 as amended in the Senate, as amended in the Senate. So the bill history, pop quiz, everybody, it's going to be about the other bill, not this bill.
February 20th, House Bill 173 was introduced for the first time and referred for printing. February 21st, it was reported printed, referred to the Committee on State Affairs. February 28th, it was reported out of committee with the recommendation that it do pass and filed for second reading. It was read the second time on March 1st. On March 2nd, it was read for the third time and passed the body, 69 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent excused at 11:55 a.m. and was transmitted to the Senate. On March 3rd, it was reported received from the House, filed for first reading, introduced, read the first time, and referred to State Affairs Committee. It was reported out of committee on March 23rd with the recommendation that it do pass, and it was filed for second reading. On March 24th, it was referred to the 14th order of business. On March 27th, it was in the Committee of the Whole, reported out as amended without recommendation. On March 27th, it was reported that the amendments were printed and it was read the first time as amended in the Senate and filed for second reading as amended in the Senate. On March 28th, it was read the second time as amended in the Senate and filed for third reading as amended in the Senate. On March 29th, it was referred back to the 14th order of business. On March 30th, it was in the Committee of the Whole, reported out as amended without recommendation. On March 30th, the amendments were reported printed. It was read the first time as amended in the Senate, filed for second reading, and currently the rules have been suspended on March 30th.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
The President would observe that we have this type of exact detail and quality and attention to detail on every bill, and our Secretary is to be commended for the quiet, perfect work that she does. Senator Trackel, you have the floor to continue your closing debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. And thank you to Madam Secretary for all that you do for us. I really appreciate it. So just in closing, ladies and gentlemen, this is another layer of protection for Idaho and to help our residents. And with that, I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. With that, debate is closed on House Bill 173 as amended in the Senate, as amended in the Senate. Thank you.
There you go. Debate being closed. The question before the Senate is, shall House Bill 173 as amended in the Senate, pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams, Anthon, Berg, Berndt, Bierke, Burtenshaw, Carlson, Cook, Den Hartog, Foreman, Geddes, Grove, Guthrie, Hart, Hartgen, Herndon, Just,
Aye.
Blakey, Lee, Lenny, Lent, Nichols, Ricks, Ruckte, Schroeder, Semoroff, Taylor,
Aye.
Taves, Trackel, Van Orden, Vick, Ward Engelking, Winder, Wintrow, Satterveld, Anthon, Den Hartog, Lee, Ricks.
Well, how old are you? I'm 8. I'm 28.
It switched over real quick, so.
To the 14th order of business. On March 27th, it was in the Committee of the Whole, reported out as amended without recommendation. On March 27th, it was reported that the amendments were printed and it was read the first time as amended in the Senate and filed for second reading as amended in the Senate. On March 28th, it was read the second time as amended in the Senate and filed for third reading as amended in the Senate. On March 29th, it was referred back to the 14th order of business.
Looks like it's going to pass.
On March 30th, it was in the
this is
Committee of the
actually
Whole,
online.
reported out as amended without recommendation. On March 30th, the amendments were reported printed. It was read the first time as amended in the Senate, filed for second reading, and currently the rules have been suspended on March 30th.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
The President would observe that we have this type of exact detail and quality and attention to detail on every bill, and our Secretary is to be commended for the quiet, perfect work that she does. Senator Trackel, you have the floor to continue your closing debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. And thank you to Madam Secretary for all that you do for us. I really appreciate it. So just in closing, ladies and gentlemen, this is another layer of protection for Idaho and to help our residents. And with that, I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. With that, Debate is closed on House Bill 173 as amended in the Senate. Thank you.
There you go. Debate being closed. The question before the Senate is, shall House Bill 173 as amended in the Senate, pass the Senate? The Secretary will call the roll.
Adams, Anthem, Berg, Burnt, Bierke, Burtenshaw, Carlson, Cook, Den Hartog, Foreman, Geddes, Grow, Guthrie, Hart, Hartgen, Hurt.
I can't really learn this one. Evidently, cut out the vote. Cut it out on the stream. All good, folks. We'll post the results of the vote. It appears to have passed, but we didn't want anybody to see it.